Hello there, welcome to Bryan Lomax Movie Talk and my review of Frailty, which is a 2001 film starring and directed by Bill Paxton, also stars Matthew McConaughey and Powers Booth. This review is a patron requested review. Joseph Lionelle requested this one of my awesome patrons. So yeah, let's get into it. Frailty follows this story told in flashback. Matthew McConaughey's character goes into this police station at the beginning and he tells this story about his own family. There's a murderer on the loose and he believes that his brother is the murderer, and he starts to confess why he thinks this is the case, and he kind of unloads this whole family backstory about how when he and his brother were children, very young children, his dad basically snapped. Or did he? That's the question. Now, he believed that his dad snapped and started hearing voices, supposedly from God, whereas his father genuinely believed that he heard God telling him to kill different people that he came across that he said were demons. Basically, these people were not people, they were demons, and God was kind of giving him this work to do. So he was doing God's work, and that is really the question. Was he or wasn't he? I've always been a fan of Bill Paxton ever since I saw him in Aliens, being the obvious kind of film really to go to, but Near Dark as well. Good to see him in a directed role and doing a pretty decent job of it as well. It's a very low-key film. I don't think it had a particularly big budget. It feels very confined to the house, the family home, and there's nothing wrong with that. It concentrates on the drama. It concentrates on that family drama and delving in to these different characters and really asking the question, how far would you go? If you felt like you were hearing from God. I do feel like as a result we get some kind of twisted theology in there that doesn't necessarily sit right with me. We get the story about Abraham being asked by God to kill his son, and it's this test of faith. But in that story, God stops Abraham. He doesn't let him go the whole way in killing his son. It's just a test of faith and nothing more. Here, we're getting God supposedly asking this guy to off these people. But then, if they're not really people and they are demons, so that's the thing. Bit of theology there going on. I'm not sure I can quite get my head around and come down on. But as an exercise in just asking that question, how far would you go to truly show your faith? I think this raises other questions about, I guess, what people have done throughout history. A lot of people have done a lot of crazy stuff in the name of God, I guess this is how it looks from the outside. The most interesting part of this film for me is just seeing how these kids handle it. So these two children, Adam and Fenton, obviously they're so young that they don't really know what to do. They feel trapped. They feel like they've got no choice but to go with what their dad is doing, because their dad kind of forces them to help him. He says that their family has been chosen, that they're on a mission, and the younger brother kind of buys into that, believes his dad. There's a good commentary here on parenting. Be careful what you teach your children, because more often than not, there's that quote in Crow which I always like, which is that in the eyes of a child, mother is God. And I think that is very true to a large extent. What comes out of your mouth, what you show your children, they're going to take as gospel up to a point. They might get to a certain age, and that's when we have the older brother, where they start to question things, where they start to make their own mind up, where they start to test the things that as a parent you might be telling them, and that's the conflict here, is that you've got this older brother who doesn't buy any of this, doesn't believe that his dad is really receiving messages from God, and that kind of rubs up against the younger brother who desperately wants to follow his dad, the instructions of his father. I love all that kind of parental family dynamics. I think it's got a lot to teach really about how we interact with our children, So yeah, very interesting film on multiple levels. Beyond that, great performances across the board. Matthew McConaughey here. This was kind of before the reconnaissance, really, wasn't it? This was in the period when he was kind of phasing out of good films and then going into all those horrible rom-coms where he was leaning against things in posters. And yeah, it took a while to get back to doing stuff like this. But yeah, I remember back during this period thinking, he was one to watch. He was someone that could do more. And thankfully he has gone on to go back really to films like this, to doing proper dramatic work. But the kids as well are pretty good in this. Jeremy Sumpter is he's good. He's not a great actor. I've seen him in other things like Peter Pan and whatnot. He does okay here. I think he's got the right personality to take on the younger son, the one who's kind of fresh-faced, doe-eyed, always looking up to his dad. I think he's well cast in that regard. I think Matt O'Leary as the older son, Fenton, he's got a bit more on his shoulders to cope with as an actor. He's really in the thick of things, having to go up against Bill Paxton's father and not agree with anything he's doing. He's got a bit more of a challenge on his hands as an actor, and he more than meets that challenge. I think a lot can be taken away from this film as well with regards to how we as parents reflect God to our children. There's this moment when Paxton's character forces the older son to dig this hole, and he wants him to pray as he's digging the hole. I think he's hoping that as the work gets harder, as the load becomes more unbearable, then this kid is going to be kind of forced into a position where he prays to get through it, kind of thing. And he doesn't. He rejects the whole notion of praying. He rejects his father's God, and he wants to go his own way. And I think it's a very good commentary, as I say, about what we reflect from God to our children, and how that kind of makes our children think and feel about God. There's a responsibility on every parent, I think, in that regard. Powers Booth plays the police officer. McConaughey's character is confessing all this stuff too. And there's something a bit slimy about Powers Booth. I've just always found that, and I think that's because of the roles that I've seen him in. Predominantly, I can't think of one off the top of my head where he was just an out-and-out good guy. He always plays someone who's a bit sleazy or just out-and-out villainous. So here it was quite strange to see him playing this cop, the good guy, so to speak. Paxton's direction is very simplistic. It kind of reminds me of what Tim Robbins did with Dead Man Walking, which is one of my favourite films of all time. It's in my top 10 movies of all time. And I like that. I like the simplicity. Again, it kind of reminds me a little bit of the way that Clint Eastwood does things. He doesn't overcomplicate things. He doesn't give you a lot of MTV style editing and flash bang and wallop and all that. It's just, he knows that what's important is the characters, the drama that is unfolding, and he lets that unfold. He steps back with the camera and just points and shoots. Essentially, that's a very kind of rudimentary way of talking about it. There's obviously more to it than that. You've got to know where to put the camera in order to get the right emotions and kind of the right coverage for things. But just the way, all I'm saying is the way it's shot, it's very simplistic. It's not too intrusive. It's not all bells and whistles and whatnot, but I like it all the more for that. So Frailty is a really good, solid, I think I would use the word, very solid thriller. If you like movies like Sixth Sense, another one that kind of springs to mind at the moment is Stir of Echoes. Not seen that for some time. I remember getting these two films confused back when they came out. Often over the years people have asked me, have you seen Frailty? And I'm like, yeah. And then I'm like, oh no, hang on, Stir of Echoes. They did come out around the same time, and for whatever reason I get them confused. But I think for good reason. I think if you've seen Stir of Echoes, you like that film, maybe check this out. Yeah, good film, solid. I think I'd give it a 3.5 out of 5. If you have seen Frailty, then I and Joseph would like to know what you think about it. So please do leave your comments down in the section below. Thank you once again to Joseph for being an absolutely brilliant patron. I do talk to him quite a bit on Facebook, and he's just such a really stand-up guy. So thank you, Joseph, for your support. And until next time, to all you out there watching, crack it.